Hello everyone! Today we have Element 3D on the agenda. In this lesson, we will try to examine each of the functions, see what Element 3D is about, when one should use it, which things and effects work well with it and which don't, and make a general overview of how it works and how I personally work with it. So let's start from the very beginning and see how it all works. Let's create a solid. Name it Element 3D and apply the Element 3D plugin to it. You can see a huge number of interesting features straight away, but we will return to them a bit later. Now we will talk about this thing over here. So click Scene Setup and wait until the plugin window opens. Let's see what we have here. What icons one should and shouldn't click. The interface is quite simple compared to that of other programs like Cinema 4D, 3D Max, Maya, or Houdini. It's a rather user-friendly interface where you can carelessly click icons and be happy about it. Here is the main preview window where you can rotate everything like this, holding down the left mouse button and move around, zoom in and zoom out with the middle mouse button. Next to it is the Scene window, where all our 3D objects will be. To the right is Model Browser, where you can find all the folders with 3D models. You can see their preview below. Here is the Edit tab, where we'll be changing the properties of objects or materials. And here are presets for textures and environment maps, as well as the Scene Materials tab. So, it's time to figure out what we have here. Let's create an object. This one, for example. You can see it was created in the center. There was also a folder created in the Scene tab. It contains our model now. Let's select wireframe instead of shaded in preview and make a quick overview of the preview modes. There are 3 of them. Shaded is the first one. It displays the light, the material, the way the thing currently looks, generally speaking. Wireframe is the second one. It displays a grid of polygons. You can see how the number of polygons changes if you decide to adjust it. The third one is point. It shows the intersection points of this wireframe. That's all you need to know about the preview modes. With the help of these checkboxes, one can enable and disable the display of objects. You can disable a whole group. There are also standard for all 3D packages navigation tools here. Using Camera tool, you can use the mouse to rotate everything like this. Switch to Selection tool, and you will no longer be able to move the camera. Instead, you'll be enabled to move around like this or to move objects. With the help of Movement tool, you can move an object in space. Using Rotation tool, you will be able to rotate the object along one of the axes. There is another one here, Scale tool, which will enable you to scale up or down the size of the object on all axes. If you click here, it will scale along 2 of them. To scale on all axes, move the cursor over here to the center. If you're using Movement tool, you can click the Axis Lock button. It is always turned off by default to make anchor point move together with the object. So if you click it and it lights up in blue, you can move anchor point, let's say here. And the object will already be rotating around the newly placed axis. Also, let me tell you about the camera display modes. Perspective is set as a default. You can rotate everything, see where objects are. You can also move them all. There are some other modes. You can look at the object from above. It's convenient if you need to align objects or even them out. Let's place the sphere in the center. I will disable box. Here you have it in the center. You can also have a view from other sides. Bottom, left, right. All these are standard tools which you should know if you started learning this. There was also a default material created. But let's talk about the object and this folder here, what they are. Our object was created straight away in the folder, which we can manage from Effect Controls outside of the plugin. Here we have group 1, and here we have 1 as well. This means that if we change the parameters of this group here, all the objects that are in this group, if there are several of them, will change. Next, we have material, and we'll talk about it later. Let's pay attention to the property of this folder and its contents first. So we have a folder and its group. You can move it, increase its size, rotate it, change anchor point. We'll talk about auxiliary animation a little later too. It's a very interesting tool to create all kinds of animations. It helps to make them. Reflect mode is a parameter that allows us to enable reflection on the object, so it will reflect everything around it. We don't need anything here. Mirror clip. Group symmetry is a very cool tool if you need to duplicate an object. If it is placed here, check the X box in Group folder and move the torus along the X-axis to duplicate it. If we move one of them, the second moves as well. Also, if we animate it in After Effects, they will be symmetrically displayed and animated. Generally speaking, they will always be mirrored. Let's move them. Turn off the symmetry. You can also enable symmetry on the Y-axis, but move not the group itself, but the object in the group. Then you'll get the symmetry. Let's turn this thing off and go down the object itself. Turn on Shaded. Let's set its position to 0. Different standard objects have different settings. Here you can see standard primitives such as a cube, a sphere, a cylinder, a plane, and so on. Here, we can increase the outer radius of the torus as well as its inner radius and increase the number of segments. Let's make 3 of them, for example, and you can see them. Whenever I create such simple objects, I always increase this value to the maximum, somewhat like this. And I also scale up the size parameter. Next, we have the classic transform parameters, the same as in After Effects. There are scale, position, and orientation, and you can flip an object along the X, Y, or Z axis, as well as change anchor point. We also have such an interesting function here as normalize size. What does it do? It normalizes the size of an object. For example, if I import a model, this one, for example, it is created in quite a large size. What is it at all? You can normalize size and the object shrinks to a normal size so that you can work on it. This object was created in a more or less normal size. If you select this head here, it isn't visible. Here it is, very small. We click on Normalize Size, and it becomes of normal size. Let's leave our characters here. I think this one turned out very funny. Let's see what else we have here. Auxiliary animation. We will talk about it a little bit later. Next, UV mapping, or what the texture looks like on the object. If you apply a texture, let's say this one, you can see that it wraps the object this way. If you change UV to box, then it is applied more uniformly. We can also increase the size of this texture, for example, make it 4 by 4, or change from box to sphere, cylinder, or plane. That is, it will be applied flatly like this. Let's leave box for now. Probably this one. What else have we got here? Surface options. I hardly use them at all, so let's not focus on them. Invert normals can be of use sometimes when you can see our object from the inside, but not from the outside. Therefore, if you find yourself in such a situation with a 3D object, just click Invert Normals and that's it. Next, reflection mode. We've already talked about this, I believe, and that's it. There is nothing more about object settings left to check out. We examined everything in the Edit window. You can also switch between these parameters by clicking these icons. Each of them will display the required parameters straight away. In the Scene window, you can create a folder, drag it here, and make it Group 2. I'll tell you about the number later. In general, you can guess that 1 corresponds to Group 1, 2 to Group 2, and so on up to 5. You can create a new folder, and if we create some objects in this folder like this, we can work with this group, apply materials, and design some cool stuff. You can easily switch to another group and work on it. It's not difficult, it's very simple with these groups. This is one of the most user-friendly interfaces I've ever seen. Therefore, let's go down a bit and focus on the texture.